Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about delusion. Your delusion is noted. So today we're going to be talking about how in Scotland, apparently, if you are a man and you decide that you are a woman, that legally they can, I guess, put in your documents that you are a woman. And when you have to go to court and the victim has to face the accused, they know that they've been penetrated by a penis, and they will still have to address them as a woman, apparently, because we're living in a cuckoo crazy world. And JK Rowling, who has just refused to back down on the controversy as opposed to the transgender issue, decided to speak out about it. So we have a tweet from her, and I think it's pretty interesting that she won't, because some people say, hey, she's not going to get canceled. She has a lot of, well, she can't get canceled, but it's not going to mean a whole lot because she's already made all this money. She's already done all this stuff. But she also has no reason to continuously keep speaking up. So perhaps she just wants to fight for truth and justice in this particular manner. There's also been other women who have, there's been two women who have come forward, I guess on the down low, to talk about the swimmers, having to compete against a biological male. There's a Penn State swimmer, we talked about it last week a few times, who's just coming in and decimating people's scores. And obviously this isn't good for women's sports, and it's something that's going to continue unless people get determined to say, no, this is crazy town. If you can identify all the way you want to, but you can keep competing with men, and you don't have to come in here and just take up every single darn award possible. Isn't it amazing how we just leaped from participation trophies to men just straight up taking women's trophies? Like, that was like a huge leap in the whole structure of our world there. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, Dr. Fauci is scaring parents, I guess, really trying to reiterate that kids can be affected by COVID, and of course they can, but they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay, and you do not need to scare parents, make them deathly afraid to the point where they got to run out and make sure that they get a shot for their kids. I've heard of parents saying that they were willing, before it became like widely available, that they wanted to put their kids in clinical trials. There's been people who are like going to falsify their kids' documents so they could get the vaccine. I mean, just crazy stuff for no apparent reason. There's no data to justify that sort of hysteria. So we're going to be talking about that as well. And a CNN producer, by the way, was arrested for pedophilia. So people were really mad about, Trump when he was president, and they kept asking QAnon stuff, and they're like, QAnon is saying that you're going to save the world from the pedos, and there's a bunch of pedophiles in high places, and Trump's like, I don't know that. I'm not familiar with that, but that sounds like a good thing, right? And they got so mad, like, are you saying that there's conspiracies of a bunch of pedophiles in high places? Like, how can I know if that's not true? And they were so mad at CNN and other places for Trump for not coming out and saying, of course, there's no pedophiles in high places. It was kind of dishonest that he didn't just come out and admit that, yeah, it's true. Because though he wasn't tied up into a lot of the other stuff, like with Epstein, which there was one flight log, people trying to make a big deal because Trump had one flight log. He didn't go to like the island. And he probably, I don't know how much he knew that there's some shady, creepy stuff with Epstein and how deep and stuff it goes, but a lot of people knew or know that there's a lot of crazy stuff with Hollywood or in government and so on. So I don't know how deep it goes, but they were so mad at Trump because he wouldn't denounce that conspiracy theory. And by the way, QAnon people, they believe some weird stuff. There's some weird stuff that I've heard some QAnon people say and believe in. The pedophile ring stuff was like the least craziest thing that they probably believed. And the media was so offended. The media was so offended that when the movie Cuties broke out on Netflix, if you guys saw that commercial with like the little girls and they're like twerk in it, like a twerk competition or something like that. The film is deeper than that, I guess, from what I've read. I did not watch it. I did not subject myself to that. But I saw enough. But they were saying that the outrage centered around that movie was QAnon focused. So much so that there are people on the left that are like, no, I think this is gross too. But they kept saying this is just QAnon people. It's like, okay, well, if you think being upset by little girls that are like, at least I think the star was like 11 in that role, being in some kind of twerking competition, and there being a scene where she takes a picture of her kuka and like sends it to somebody, and there's a bunch of other crazy stuff. There's Flash Boom in the movie, and if that's a right-wing conspiracy theory, like if that's a right-wing trait, being mad about children being prematurely exposed and to this kind of stuff and being taken advantage of, then we should win every election ever if that's a right-wing trait. But the media is really crazy, just on all fronts. And by the way, this person was a producer at CNN, but he worked for New Day under Cuomo. So it's just really interesting. It's really interesting. It's the world that we live in. The world that we live in is crazy. By the way, Joe Biden said something about QAnon as well, tried to blame division and stuff on them too. So we'll jump into all this, cover it today. But before we do that, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. Check out different articles that I've written and make sure that you guys are sharing them around. I did just drop a new video today. It's on my Facebook and my YouTube right now, and I'll post it on Instagram and TikTok as soon as I get off the air. But it's based off the article I wrote covering the Rittenhouse trial, relating it to critical race theory. I put it in a nice little 3-minute video, so it's not terribly long. Short enough to go on TikTok. So if you haven't seen it, I'm short enough that I think it can captivate your attention span and other people's attention span. If you're curious, like, why do they talk so much about race? Why do they talk so much about race? I explain it because critical race theory, which Joy Reid from MSNBC, we all love Joy Reid here, right? She mentioned during some Rittenhouse coverage, like, we need critical race theory in this country. And you might be thinking, what does critical race theory have to do with this trial? What would critical race theory teach us about this trial, and how would it make us have a different perception of it? Which, by the way, I hear Black activists or just racial activists, clout chasers, whatever, say that all the time, especially like on TikTok. People will be blatantly racist. There'll be Black people will be blatantly racist. They'll be blatantly racist toward white people. Try to tell them off and be like, this is why we need critical race theory. It's like, why? Because the way that it seems like to me is critical race theory is communist nonsense. It was Marxist nonsense dressed up and introduced by Black communist people who are trying to guilt white people into the con. That's what it is to me. I mean, it's more complicated than that, and I can explain it more elegantly than that, but that's just FYI. That's the end goal. That's the punchline. Just kind of breaking it down. That's what it is. But anyway, I explain different aspects of the trial, different people's reactions to it, in the commentary, in the end goal, and I have a few quotes from literature from critical race theory, and I didn't even use like white fragility. I didn't use Ibrahim Kendi. I used Crenshaw and Stefanczyk and people who are like the people in the movement. So you can go ahead and watch that 3-minute video, share it around for more like the resources and details, and go ahead and read that article on blacktnews.com. But it's a great video just so you can see how this plays into our world. And it's not something that's new. But we're seeing it more, and we really, really, really need to push back against it. Some people say, well, I think we should at least maybe well, maybe not in high school, but I think we should be it could be taught as like a class, maybe in high school, or it could taught in college or something. Or maybe it's just bad. And maybe we shouldn't be taught in schools, because to me it's just like a political activism religion almost. And the goal isn't to be objective, it's to be subjective. So maybe in a philosophy class, but like we're having a philosophy legal class or something, but there's not something that we should incorporate into our world. It's just not good. And it explains it in the video. Go watch the video, and go read stuff on blacktnews.com. I'm sure that you will appreciate that. So I put it together. I hope you guys like it. So that's on the website. Also, make sure that you guys are checking out different merchandise on the website as well. The sun is like setting where I am. Isn't it crazy that it's like 4 o'clock? It's just like so bright as the sun is setting right now. Check out different merchandise that I have on the website. Like, I'm not the victim you're looking for. I got the goat hoodies in different colors. I guess I'll have this I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace stills, border security, ICE destroyed, and a bunch of other stuff. And I got other t-shirts. I also have books that I've written. I have historical fiction fantasy books that I've written. That is not it, though. This is a historical fiction fantasy book series that I have. Also have nonfiction faith books as well. And I do also have children's middle grade chapter books. I got kind of something for everybody. So you guys can visit website blacktnews.com, and there's a link to my book website if you want to check any of that stuff out, get some good gifts for Christmas, and support the show. Also visit blacktnews.com/donate if you like what I do here, you want to see it continue to grow. I appreciate you guys and what you do, and we can do more if you help out. So God bless you guys. I also want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC for allowing me to be in their studio, though the sun is quite bright right now. I appreciate the PAC and the stuff that they do locally, and they do good work. So if you are in the state of Michigan, not necessarily have to be in the state of Michigan, but go ahead and check out Brighter Michigan PAC. And as always, they don't care if I say something that triggers you, and I certainly don't care. There's no one to complain to. It doesn't work like that. I'm simply using the space, and it's much appreciated. Okay, so funny thing, I always like to start off with a joke, some kind of funny meme. And this comes from G Prime 85. He's my go-to guy. So you have this man here taking the COVID shot, then taking another, and then taking the booster, and now he's like living in a little globe, and he's like, you aren't fully vaccinated? Don't you want to be healthy like me? So looking at someone who's clearly a healthy person. So that's the world that we pretty much live in. People, they're encouraging that now on the news, I'm hearing people say, give yourself a Christmas gift and get the booster shot. Now, they're saying that you need to do this so we can get rid of COVID. It's endemic. It's never going to go away. So when people start being honest about at least that fact, maybe we can start being honest about how we're going to get back to the rest of our lives. But you see people shutting down stuff. You see people still having mask mandates. You see people mad that the government won't do more mandates and stuff. Thankfully, Biden is being shut down in the courts. So nobody's, I guess, any more people is really getting laid off before Christmas. But people had a lot of questions before. And a lot of people have lost their jobs already. So we'll see if they can get them back, or what can continue after a lot of stuff got paused. But Biden is still telling people he was telling people to ignore the courts and just keep pressing on, checking on as if nothing had happened, because they're going to continue to fight, and maybe they want it to go all the way to the Supreme Court so it can get shot down. And then they can blame the conservative justices and say it's because Trump stole those seats with Gorsuch and stole it with Amy Coney Barrett, and they never should have had those seats, and blah, blah, blah. And it's really these conservative justices are doing all these things. Maybe that's the route that they want to go, but he could just take that out and just allow people to get back to the rest of their lives so the economy can at least get better. But They gave people a bunch of money. There's some people who just went out and blew it. But there's a lot of people who had in savings, or a lot of people who kept getting payments, or there's people who decide, you know what, I can live without my paycheck, and they quit their jobs, especially because they didn't want to wear masks every day. They didn't want to get the shot. They didn't want whatever. They just decided to stay at home. And then Biden, they decided that they would start paying families money, right? They're like, we defeated poverty. It's like, is that what you did, Biden? Or are you continuously creating a world in America where people don't feel that they have to work? And so now we have this huge labor shortage. Oh my gosh. There's a video. I forgot to download. I'm going to try to download it while I'm talking to you guys. Hopefully all goes according to plan. But the Democrats released a video, and it's a video showcasing the job growth, and they're like, it's the Biden boom, and they're bragging about it. And obviously there is a boom because a lot of people were working. A lot of people lost their jobs with the pandemic. Businesses got shut down and whatnot. And so I retweeted it on my Twitter page, and I said, they killed your job just to have this talking point. They killed your jobs just to have this talking point. And it's something that I've noticed, like my state senator, Debbie Stabenow, she's a Democrat. She had put out some kind of message on Facebook maybe like a year ago, talking about how the economy was bouncing back or whatever, or jobs under Republicans, there's a big drop, or unemployment goes up or something. And then a Democrat comes in, like at the end of Bush era, there was the housing market crisis and all that kind of stuff. We had a bit of a crash, and then Obama came in, and then so then it went up a bit, but then the recovery was super slow, and then the economy was slamming under Trump. It was slamming under Trump, and all of a sudden we had COVID, and so then of course we had an artificial depression. So Biden came in, and we should have things. We should be so. He should great right now. I mean, not saying that we shouldn't have at least some supply chain issues, but if they wouldn't have kept trying to extend the pandemic for the purposes of power, we'd be a lot further along with our economy, and he'd be looking at a recovery that's much, much better, and his polling wouldn't be complete trash right now. But he ruined something that should have been like silver platter, just handed to him. But they're still saying like, hey, we had this big spike in or big dip in low employment rather. So I'm like, you guys, Debbie Stabenow, Democrats, you guys want this talking point so bad, and it was worth destroying people's jobs. It was worth destroying people's livelihoods, because now you get to see, this is what happens when you vote Democrat. We can have this big recovery after after you blew everything up. Sure, that's exactly what happened. So here it is. It's going to come over me. So there it is. The little graphic that they had. Jobs created. Oh, look, Biden's going and going and going and going and going and oh my gosh, look at how much was created. Yeah. There's some context missing there. Where's the fact checkers on that? Missing context. I didn't see a missing context thing on Senator Stabenow's post when she posted her little message, and I didn't see Twitter post any missing context with that, or there's just no missing context when people claim like, which the context would be like, we had a global pandemic and it shut down a lot of people's jobs, destroyed a lot of people's businesses, and then they kept people at home for a very, very long time. They kept people for a very long time, paid them to stay home. So now some of that stuff is weaning out. People are going back to work now, some of them anyway. So there's this big boom, and not even the big boom that they thought it would be. It's not even as robust as they thought it would be. As a matter of fact, the AP, I think it was the AP, there was a graphic that was put out because people were upset about the comparison with the jobs because it was so underwhelming. But they were like, well, when Trump added under Trump, when it was about the same amount of jobs, they were saying it was so robust. And now with Biden, they're saying it's a disappointment, and they're trying to paint this narrative like there's some kind of double standard. There is a double standard, but people hated Trump. But he was doing such a good job with the economy, they just had to be honest about it. But now they're pretending like that the media is now being too harsh on Biden, which is bizarre. So this is the graphic that MSNBC put out with AP showing their title. So, and their tweet was pointing out that when under Trump, they said it was robust with the jobs added. And then when the last jobs report, when it's only 210,000, they said it was sluggish. So they were trying to make it seem like Joe Biden is being treated unfairly. The reason why it was such a disappointment with the Biden administration is because they expected way, way, way more jobs than that. So it was disappointing. They didn't, and with the Trump, they thought it would be less jobs than that. So when Trump had a good outcome that was better than expected, they're like, oh yeah, it's growth. And with the Biden administration, when they missed big on the numbers, they're like, oh gosh, that is actually disappointing. So there's the missing context for MSNBC. I didn't see a missing context label on that tweet, by the way. And it's just absolutely delusional to believe that the media is being harsher on Biden than it is on Trump, or was on Trump. They're still harsh on Trump. They like to talk about Trump every chance that they can get. Every chance they can get. Every chance that they can get. Let's go back to COVID for a second. So Dr. Fauci was on TV. I don't understand why they still want to have this man on TV. I know what he's got on them. I don't know. I don't know what's this cultish, we must use Fauci mentality, but here's Fauci trying to scare the parents into getting their kids to get jabs.
If your child is 5 years of age and older, please get them vaccinated. We need to protect the children. This idea that children are not vulnerable at all is not so, George. I mean, certainly statistically, children do not get as severe disease as the adults, particularly the elderly. But if you look at the number of cases of children, now well over 2 million children from 5 to 11 have been infected. There have been over 8,000 to 9,000 hospitalizations and well over 100 deaths.
Well over 100 deaths, he said. Well over 100 deaths. Was it well over? I mean, it's over. It's over. That's still pretty low. By the way, this is entire pandemic, by the way. The entire pandemic. Ages 1 to 4, 68. And 5 to 14, 199. And that's the date from I guess November, actually. So it's about a month off. But that's the entire pandemic. By the way, this is still like with COVID. If you died with COVID, they said you died of COVID. So these kids likely, and I think in most cases, I don't want to, have an absurd absolute, and I'm not positive, so I'm not going to say all, but normally, these kids who would contract COVID and die at that age bracket have some kind of underlying condition that makes them would make them more vulnerable. And you can do what you want with your. Ultimately, parents have to do what they feel is best. But he mentioned how many cases there were. But he mentioned like in the millions, and the deaths are well over 100. Okay, there's like 160 something from the numbers that I had, so it's well over 100, not even to 200. And it's tragic when any child dies at all, but out of millions. Do people see that is really, 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 really rare for your child to be severely harmed by this disease. So if they have a pretty good shot of being okay, do you want to give them a jab that the pharmaceutical companies have no liability with? No liability. You cannot sue them if something goes wrong. You got to take your grievance up to the government and hope they pay you more than they, or at least pay like they're going to pay those illegal immigrants crossing the border. You better hope they at least do that. That's insane to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. It might make sense to you. You might have did whatever for your kid. But again, I've heard of people who wanted to get their kids on clinical trials to try to get this vaccine. Now there's a new variant. And they keep encouraging people to get it, get the booster, get whatnot. So for some protection. But it's not even as effective to these new vaccines. Now, again, this is endemic. We're going to have COVID like forever. And this new variant, which, by the way, Omicron, people are joking and calling it Omarion, like a singer. It has that name because of political reasons. Like they didn't want it to be named new in you, because I think that would have been the next one in the chain with the alphabets, like the Greek alphabet. They didn't want to do it that one because they didn't want to say, oh, it's the new variant. They didn't want to confuse people. And then the next one I think would have been Xi, XI. But even though it's pronounced differently, they didn't want it to seem like it was maybe Xi, because they said it was too common of a name. And perhaps it is too common of a name. And perhaps they didn't want to go back to the days of the China virus and whatnot, even though we know that gain of function research probably made this happen in a lab in China, not a wet market, right? Which, by the way, the wet market theory, that seems like that would lead to more racism and animosity, I think, because that would just be like the people doing something culturally that's weird, and that would evolve into this huge pandemic, like people. And it wasn't just China, right? It was like our money and stuff that helped to fund this stuff. So you can't totally blame it on China. But the fact that there were like mad scientists who like created this can't we like blame them instead of like, oh, Chinese people had bat soup and it went AWOL? Like that's them framing them, to me, was worse. They kept blaming or saying like, oh, it's so racist. Like, well, you guys are creating the division with your wet market theory. That if they looked at the data and how the virus looked and transmitted and stuff, didn't make sense anyway. And they knew it didn't make sense, but they didn't want to say, oh, shoot, this was our fault. So they didn't want this to be the spelled XI, because that's the name of the leader of China. It wouldn't be pronounced the same way, but they didn't want to go that route, so they went to the Omicron. They're like, oh, that sounds intimidating, I guess. Now, but this one is very soft. No one's died from it, from what we know. People have very mild symptoms or are asymptomatic comparatively with like Delta and whatnot. So if you're going to get COVID, this is the variant that it seems like would be better to get it so you can have some natural immunity. Which, there's people who got COVID. My dad got COVID last November. He got tested maybe about a month ago, and he still had his antibodies. But you can get the boosters and stuff, whatnot, but they're not totally effective. And you can still catch it, you can still spread it. So what is the motivation behind making your kids get this stuff? I mean, it's got to be money. Someone saw that's called the Hunter Biden variant. That's funny. There's got to be ulterior motives, because it's not science. Science doesn't drive this. Even if it was just a science, like it was always a mistake to just be like, trust the science, trust, because there's so many other variables in life. These people aren't elected officials. They're people hired to do a job, and they have their expertise, allegedly, that they're supposed to be functioning in, sure. But the government still is supposed to have an interest in protecting our liberties. That's allegedly, that's what it's supposed to be doing. So while they're trying to try to keep us safe, they still have to keep the health of the country overall in perspective. And I don't mean like the physical health of the country, which sure, let's say that's important, but the overall health of our democracy, our constitutional republic. And overstepping liberties again and again and again, and taking power, because they don't just give that back normally. They don't give it all back ever. And to the people who once thought that they would, you guys are suckers. I appreciate like the Daily Wire being part of the lawsuits and stuff, but I remember when Ben Shapiro tweeted out like, those who are thinking that it's going to be a permanent thing, don't freak out, and those who are threatening it to make it so, stop it. And I'm just like, your tweet needs nothing, man. And here we are today, and they have to sue the government to make them not mandate vaccines to their employees. That's where we are now. I appreciate them. I appreciate them. But I think Ben Shapiro needs to update his I was wrong list. As a matter of fact, that's one of my articles on blacktnews.com. They were never giving that power back, but it's not science. And the scientists, we don't elect them to make decisions for us. We're supposed to be electing people who are going to preserve our liberties. And maybe they'll come up with a good idea or two, fund the roads and whatnot, responsible manners. But all the stuff they're doing right now, blatant power grabs. There are people reporting that their kids aren't allowed to eat indoors in school, so they have to eat outside, some of them on the ground. Yet we'll have people, elected officials, who will institute mandates and then go out and break them. How is this possible? And when I say how is it possible that the people who put up with the people who are making them put up with it? I don't understand. I don't understand. And there was crazy stuff that happened in our state, and people started like protesting when the rules got really stupid. They had the gridlock thing in Lansing when people just went in their cars and were honking and whatnot. There were other protests that people had. Some people went too far with some of them, like showing up people's houses. That's not cool. There's people who just blatantly defied stuff. They didn't make a big deal out of it, but they're like, I'm going to not wear my mask, or I'm going to, you say I can't visit a friend's house, I'm going to do it anyway, or I'm going to go to church, which that was actually that was actually kind of exempt with going to church. You still could have went to church. A lot of people didn't know that. My church, we never missed a beat. Actually, we added church days. So, and I'm extraordinarily introverted, so I can't say my pandemic was as bad as everybody else's pandemic. Especially since I didn't live in fear. I'm sorry. My heart grieves for people who really, really lost their livelihoods and were so incredibly lonely. And there were some policies that they had, especially people being in the hospitals alone by themselves, which I did have to experience that. Not me being alone in the hospital, my dad being in the hospital alone without being able to be their family. I think that was cruel. I think we did a lot of terrible things in that pandemic, and Fauci continuing trying to scare parents is just egregious. Well, let's jump to Biden. I want to play this clip of Biden, like, blaming the division on QAnon right-wing people.
I did Bob Dole's eulogy today. He asked me on his deathbed whether I would do his eulogy. We're friends. We disagreed, but we were friends. We used to have an awful lot of that relationship, and there still exists, except that the QAnon and the extreme elements of the Republican Party and what Donald Trump keeps sort of, seems to me, feeding the with the big lie, it makes it awful hard. There's And I think most Republicans, and there's an awful lot of Republicans in Congress, I think, would agree.
So, for those of you who don't know, we had a convention in Mackinac in September, and I met Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz, and he talked. We asked, like, how is it really with the people there, and like Rashida Tlaib and whatnot, like all those folks who are like extraordinarily on the left that seem pretty hostile or crazy when we see them like doing questioning and whatnot. I'm like, what are they like actually like? Is some of this just bravado for TV? And in his opinion, he said January 6th broke them. So of course people have said garbage stuff before, but he said he had like good conversations and was cordial, whatever, to different people. But January 6th, it was like, you're my enemy, you're my enemy, you're my enemy. Like people won't even ride together in elevators. Like they treat you like you are like an actual traitor of the country, which is interesting because I mean some of them would straight up like support. I don't want. Well, let's just say other people have very questionable allies on the other side. So January 6th really broke people, and if they want to be fair to people across the board, because Biden got elected by a lot of people because they thought we'd have a sense of normalcy. Maybe we can have like, I don't even know how many people would actually have like bipartisan efforts or whatever, because basically they want their stuff passed and they want you to shut up and get on board with it. Like, do they really want people to come together, or do they just want to shoehorn what they want through and drag people to the others from the other side to make, I don't think much people really respect respectable compromises, in my opinion. So there's no camaraderie. People who believe that Biden was going to come in and bring some kind of unity, which Biden claimed that he said this big unity speech or whatever ever when he was inaugurated, which I didn't watch his inauguration speech. And I know Chris Wallace and other people really enjoyed it. Maybe I'll have to go back and watch it and do a live react to it or something like that. And with my hindsight, responding to his inauguration speech, maybe I'll do that. Just looking back in a year of Biden, or almost a year. But he did not push unity. He divided Americans between masked and unmasked, vaccinated, not vaccinated. They mentioned January 6th. Like, there's people being held who are basically political hostages. The committee right now is going after people who weren't there, but like there's one woman who had a permit, secured a permit, really she was a donor or something, and they want all of her phone records. They're going after people's phone records way back. Why? For what purpose? Just because they can, because they're drunk on power, to punish people. The Russiagate stuff was to punish Trump and his associates and so on. And Biden is the one who suggested using the Logan Act. His hands were dirty in that. It's just delusional, going back to the title, delusional that anyone would trust Biden to bring some kind of unity. This is a man who, Borking and the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas. This is the person who said Mitt Romney was going to put black people back in chains. In chains, guys. Mitt Romney, milquetoast Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney. That's why I also am annoyed when he like wants to be all buddy too. I can be cordial with people like your colleagues and whatever. So I wouldn't be all like hostile like they are with each other right now. But I'm not gonna be friends with people who like said I was gonna put people back in chains. Like, are you like why? No. I would have no delusions about how the media would treat me. So I don't get some of these Republicans that just kind of flip-flop for a few nice comments here and there, in my opinion. That's what it seems like. But Joe Biden was extraordinarily divisive, and he is still extraordinarily divisive. I mean, the Kyle Rittenhouse case, at first he was like, we trust the jury. And then they issued a statement that said, I know all of you are sad. Me too. And I'm like, why are you sad? The facts got the facts were the facts, and the jury recognized the facts, and it was self-defense. What are you sad about? Because you really, really, really wanted this kid to spend the rest of his life in jail for protecting his life? And I understand that he had a staffer or whatever who wrote that. But why is he allowing these crazy people to just run shot all over him? He may be a little not there, but he's got something. They trust him enough to function enough to go out there and read the teleprompter. He may say, end quote, at the end of the speech. But a little something is there. A little something is there. But he was always divisive, and he was always going to go wherever the wind blew, because that's who Joe Biden is. And people who thought differently were absolutely delusional. Absolutely delusional. Let's move. Oh, speaking of the media. So I got this screenshot. Someone sent me this screenshot over the weekend, which, by the way, if you've seen this, I am not short. Christina Carano, she is running for Secretary of State. She's a good buddy of mine, and she's very tall. She is very tall. My sister saw that, and the one who's right above me in age, she's like, man, she makes you look short and stubby. And I'm like, I was wearing flats at the time, and she was wearing heels, and she's tall anyway. And my sister Katrina, she's taller than me, but Christina is taller than my sister Katrina when Katrina wears her heels. She's very tall. So I'm not short. I'm not a short person, but she is so tall. She's so tall. But anyway, someone sent me the screenshot. Apparently CNN did a hit piece. This is apparently their third hit piece on Christina Carano. She's running for Secretary of State in the state of Michigan, and I guess they're doing a segment about Trump supporting different people who believe the big lie, as they still are saying they're still pretty obsessed with Trump. Because talking Trump probably spikes their ratings like a little bit, though they are on their last, I won't say last legs, but they're not in a good spot as far as their ratings go. So I guess I got on CNN a little bit. So this is from a interview that I did for the Brighter Michigan PAC. They were having this is a tribute to the Fallen and Wounded Soldiers Fund. And so she came there to support, and I did an interview with all the candidates that I could. And it was we just posted it on their social media page. And CNN didn't ask me for permission. They didn't ask the PAC for permission. I guess they figure it's for use, but I'll remember that. If they ever try to ding me, I'm like, y'all did that to me. So I'm just using y'all clips. Y'all use my clips. So I was on CNN for a little bit, for a hot second. So if you saw it, that's why my face was there. I did post this picture. Just there's a little context, but they have done a few hit pieces on Christina. She said that they keep wanting to do an interview with her. They want to do an interview with her, but she keeps saying she will not do one unless it is live, and they will not agree to give her a live interview. So very interesting. She wanted an unedited live interview, and they won't let it happen. Really interesting. Also, a CNN producer has been arrested. CNN decided that they would let them go after, I guess, they got caught up in that. But a CNN producer, a staffer was arrested allegedly for inducing minors for sex. CNN suspended one of his staffers following a federal indictment accusing him of coercing parents to allow their minor daughters to engage in sexual activity in his home. John Griffin, who, according to his LinkedIn profile, is a senior producer for CNN's flagship morning program, New Day, that's Chris Cuomo's show. Chris Cuomo has also been kicked out of CNN, was arrested on Friday by the FBI after being charged by a grand jury in Vermont with 3 counts of using a facility of interstate commerce to attempt to entice minors to engage in unlawful sexual activity. What is up with that network right now, guys? So this guy who worked for Chris Cuomo on New Day was arrested. So they let him go. Chris Cuomo was arrested because he helped his creepy brother try to like cover up his sexual crimes or whatever, or sexual assaults. And then his brother, who was the governor of New York, ended up resigning in disgrace for his sexual escapades. Though I believe that they forced him out in that way because they didn't want to have the nursing home scandal continuously in the news. So out of sight, out of mind. That's my opinion. I'm not saying he shouldn't have gone down for what he went down for, but there were some other things that he should have definitely went down for. And we should not allow them to just get away with what happened with the nursing home scandal, especially since that touches other governors, including mine in Michigan. So I'm pretty sure that that's why they said let him go out this way. But we can't just let that go as well. We got to continue to keep talking about the people, the senior citizens who died in the nursing homes because these geniuses decided that they needed to be bedding with COVID patients, which is insane. You have Fauci saying that kids who basically are not dying of it. You have had a little, like 260 kids the entire pandemic in the United States who, gosh, and did he say 2 million cases worldwide? The graphic I showed you of how many deaths were from the US. So, I have to go back and watch that clip. Because it's still not a lot with the kids being hurt, but they want to get you to go out and get vaccinated. But these people at the beginning decided to put the elderly in the most vulnerable situation. So they need to be held accountable for that. But CNN is apparently a creepy place. Very creepy place. If you also recall Tubin, who is their legal analyst, he was suspended for a little while for pleasuring himself on a Zoom call, but they did decide to rehire him. So the media was so mad when Trump wouldn't denounce the conspiracies about deep state pedophiles or pedophiles being in high positions of power. And they were so mad at him, like, oh my gosh, he knows this isn't true. He's just playing into it, whatever. They appear to be everywhere. We talked last week about how in the CIA, they had some really terrible cases. There was like 10 cases of people that they had. Now, it could have been more, but this is what was revealed through the FOIA request, that they at least had 10 people they let go, and some of them did not get prosecuted at all. Most of them didn't get prosecuted at all. And one of them admitted to having doing stuff to a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old. So there's some deep state, deep perversion. The Ghislaine Maxwell case, we have not really learned much anything new from that trial. To me, it seems like there's a lot they didn't want to go public with. And so they're like, oh, well, we did a good thing because she's being tried. So you take your win and you be happy with it. But it's like, there's a lot of people, like he kept videos and whatnot and logs. There's a lot of people who could be implicated in this, I'm sure, that they're hiding. So I'm glad that, she's going through her trial and whatnot. But it really seems like we're getting the short end of the stick as far as justice with this. But they hated when QAnon talked about the pedophiles, though. They hated it. And I'm not pro QAnon. I know there's some weird stuff that they believe, but it weirded me out that what they really focused on was the pedophile thing. That offended them. It offended them so much. there's obviously some truth to it. Obviously some truth to it. Last thing I want to address is this story. JK Rowling is back in the news on the sticking up for biological women front. Because in Scotland, if you are a man and you decide to sexually assault a woman, but you identify as a woman, you have to be referred to as a woman legally. So people ask, where is this pronoun stuff going to go? The identity stuff, like it's harmless. This is weird, right? Like it's not just me. Like this is weird that if you're in a court of law and you have to like sit in front of you're the accuser, right? You've been sexually assaulted, and you're looking at the stand, and there's a person there who's clearly a man, and he penetrated you with his candlestick or whatever you want to call it, and you have to call her a woman. That's kind of crazy, right? So she uses Orwell quote and kind of change it. Said war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The penicid individual who raped you is a woman. Now, people don't like JK Rowling because she keeps bringing this up. She won't bow to the pronoun game. And this is a woman who wrote a series, the Harry Potter series, that taught about classism and racism and all the other kind of stuff with the world of like the structure of the magic, the mudbloods and the muggles and whatnot. I've seen like the films. I didn't read them. I'm not a huge fan. The movies are okay. They are very okay, in my opinion. I know a lot of people. They made a lot of money, made a lot of people happy. I was just kind of like casually watching them. But she was like the center of a lot of kids' universe with creating this own universe with a lot of great life lessons. But now people despise her so much so that HBO is putting a special thing with Harry Potter, like gosh, is it 20-year or something? Are they all that old? I don't know. It's like a anniversary with Harry Potter on HBO, and they're only going to use like clips of her in the past. They did not invite her to participate, and people assume it's because she's a little toxic. Not she's actually toxic, but they just feel that the truth she's trying to like reveal to people is toxic. So much so that there was an actress who just, at least acknowledged like, hey, this is my first role. I'll always be thankful to JK Rowling. And people were mad at the actress for acknowledging just a fact. How dare she thank the person who says that women are women and men are men and they're not interchangeable? So people would say, I heard Matt Walsh make the point that some would say that she doesn't really have much to lose because she already has so much. So even if they try to cancel her, can they really cancel JK Rowling? And I guess you can still cancel people to degree, but she has a lot of money. So people say that she doesn't have anything to really lose. But at the same time, what does she have to gain? What does she have to gain from continuously speaking out against this as well? So I think she just wants to speak out on this truth. And someone has to. So kudos to her. Kudos to her, because it does have bigger effects. We're seeing it in the legal system in different places. And it's creeped over here as well, I would say. We've got situations where in Loudoun County, you had a boy who raped a girl in the bathroom. And they covered it up. They covered it up. The dad who went there at a school board meeting was upset. He got a little testy. They ended up arresting him. That incident made it in the National School Boards Association's letter of examples of, hey, why they might need the Justice Department to use the Patriot Act on parents. So this stuff goes deeper. It's not just a cute little, you identify the way you identify. No. There's always an agenda. Especially when you get like the law involved. But we've seen this in women's sports. Now that it's there's an athlete at Penn State who is a biological male. He competed for 3 years as a biological male, and he's coming in now and he's destroying all the records. And women just have to shut up and they have to take it. They just have to shut up and they have to take it. But there are a few women, now they've been advised not to speak out to the press about it because this is getting a lot of press. But they've been encouraged by the university not to say anything. But there's been at least 2 girls who've come out on the down low talking about how their teammates have been in tears because we live in an unfair, crazy, crazy world where you can work your whole life, think you're going to get far, compete with other people on a playing field that is somewhat fair, and then someone comes in with testosterone and just blows you totally out of the water. Again, this is the athlete. You can identify as a woman. No one is like stopping you from believing whatever you want to believe. But why do we have to play into the delusion? So much so that you can come in and compete against me and win, or you can compete against another woman and win, or you can compete against someone's kid and beat them. Someone's got to address that this is crazy. And shame on the school. Shame on everybody who lets this happen. I know the girls are probably concerned about their scholarships or their careers and how they'd be ostracized if they really, really stood up against it. But all the women should protest. There should be protests in the competition. When they're doing competition, there should be people with signs. There should be women who will not get in the water and compete on principle. This person is a man. He was born a man, he will die a man. And he can claim to be a woman, live his life as authentically as a woman as possible until he uses his male privilege to beat the women. They want to talk about the patriarchy. Why is this not the patriarchy coming in to just demolish women? I don't know why women have to be the victims in this case. And Abigail Schreier, I read her piece last week. She talked about this, mentioned this, because she went to Princeton, and there was a female athlete there. Her record got beaten by this person. So when are people going to stand up and do what's right? And her speech was about, because people hate Abigail Schreier because she wrote a book on the transgenderism craze, capturing the hearts and minds of young women. And she just wrote the story because it was true, not because she's some kind of activist or trans hater or anything like that. Parents reached out to her and said, will you please look into this? No one else would take it. No one else would touch it. So she decided to go ahead and do it. She wrote a bestseller, but she's vile to a lot of people. And so when she goes to different places, they ask her, what is it like to be so hated? Can you imagine living your life and that is the hottest question that people have for you? What's it like that the whole world hates you? And so she said it was liberating. It was freeing. Because you don't know how much free will you have until you're ready to take the red pill and push against the system and break out of the darn matrix. She didn't put it like that, but that's the point. You don't know who you really are. A lot of people are programmed to think a certain way. 62% of Americans are afraid to voice their real opinions. So do we truly have free speech when you're that afraid of social repercussions? Like you got to have a social credit score like we're in China or something like that? I don't think so. So until you're brave enough to stand up against the system, you're just a robot being programmed. And the code is fear. The code is fear. So Are you going to stand up and just acknowledge reality and be brave enough to say, you know what? Men are men and women are women. Men cannot get pregnant, and men should not be competing against females. They can if we want to break down all those barriers, but we're not about to just let a man enter into a female competition when he could be, when the truth is these guys are just probably afraid to compete with other males. And you can say, well, we don't want to be unfair. Well, if you have a child, in this case, this is a grown person, but he's somebody's child. If you have someone who is deciding to be trans, you got to let them know that there may be some things that they're going to give up in order to achieve this. If that's what they really want. You can't always teach that your kids are going to have it all. But this is absurd. So whether it's with this or just speaking up about certain issues, whether it's on race, whether it's about the economy, they're trying to gaslight you into thinking that, like, they were trying to gaslight you into believing like inflation stuff wasn't that big of a deal. But it's so bad right now that even the news is acknowledging that it's pretty bad. So that's where we're at right now. But they try to gaslight you. They're trying to gaslight you with all sorts of things. They're trying to convince you, scare parents to making their kids take the jab, saying, get yourself a Christmas present, take the booster. Because we got to stop it. We got to stop it. We got to do whatever we can to stop it. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? It's endemic. We will never, 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 never totally get rid of it. So you just plan to keep this up forever? And maybe they do. Maybe they do, but I'm not going to be part of it. I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to keep speaking up. And I appreciate you guys being here to listen, but I need other people to do that too. So hopefully you're inspired and you're going to break free from the matrix as well. That is the show for today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please check out that video that I posted about the Rittenhouse case and critical race theory. Please share that around as much as you can. Visit the website, check out different articles that I've written. Please check out the store and different merchandise that I have, like the My Money, My Business shirt. I got the pumpkin spice season, got some black tea mugs. Check out that stuff from the store. And also check out different books that I've written as well. And if you like what I do, if you appreciate what I do, please consider leaving a donation on blacktnews.com. I appreciate you guys so much. Make sure that you're following me on social media. My handles are at Black Tea News on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. The only one that is different is at Twitter, and that one is at True Black Tea. I will see you guys tomorrow, and God bless.